Welcome back to my inner sanctum. I'm your hostess, Countess Elizabeth, mistress of the macabre. Mankind has a desire to go where no other man has gone before, where despite the obvious dangers, they want to be the one who discovers a new thing and becomes famous. It is part of human nature to explore and want to be renowned for their discoveries. Today, we will take a trip on the HMS Terror and try to piece together what happened on Sir John Franklin's lost Arctic expedition. So let us put on our warmest parka and set sail as we explore our grotesque curiosity. On May 19th, 1845, the HMS Erebus and its sister ship, HMS Terror, sailed out of the River Thames carrying 128 officers and men under the command of Sir John Franklin. Their mission? To locate the fabled Northwestern Passage, the long-sought pathway from the Atlantic to the Pacific through Canada's ice-strewn Arctic inlets. They would never see Europe again. All traces of the Franklin crew vanished in 1848. A little background on Sir John Franklin and his Arctic expeditions. Yes, expeditions, meaning this was not his first time. Europeans wanted to find a Northwestern Passage to make trade between Europe and Asia faster. Franklin had been on 3 previous Arctic expeditions, but they should have all been a warning not to go exploring anymore. The first expedition he went on to find the fabled Northwestern Passage was called off due to violent storms and packed ice, despite the crew exploring in the summertime. The violent storms and ice foreshadowed what would happen on Franklin's final journey. However, this was only the first expedition. His second expedition in the Arctic would be much, much worse. Despite the failure of the first expedition, Franklin was appointed to lead an overland expedition to explore subarctic Canada in 1819. Between 1819 and 1822, he lost 11 of the 20 men in his party. Most died of starvation. His route would take his party, which included physician-naturalist Sir John Richardson, 3 naval personnel, and a crew of voyagers from Hudson Bay to the Coppermine River Delta on the Arctic Ocean. Disaster struck quickly. The party failed to meet at base camp before the cold winter set in. Their canoes fell apart, and they ran out of food. A voyager allegedly killed and ate several men. Franklin and others survived by nibbling on shoe leather. On the brink of death, they were saved by Yellowknife guides, who were Native Americans who lived in the area, who brought them food and supplies. When he returned to England after the 3-year calamity, Franklin was ridiculed as the man who ate his boots. And I guess he thought a third time would be the charm, so he went on a third expedition to map the Mackenzie River, thinking that there was a Northwestern Passage there to the Pacific. This expedition was actually not that bad, but they didn't find the Northwestern Passage. Franklin brought more supplies this time, so nobody starved, and it was pretty uneventful. One of the highlights was his men playing a sort of ice hockey game. Being that they were in Canada, that doesn't surprise me in the least bit. He did make headway and was lauded as a hero for his accomplishments on this expedition. They even made him governor of Tasmania. In 1845, Franklin was about to turn 60. He ended up having a terrible time as a governor of Tasmania, where he was politically stabbed in the back and recalled to England by the colonial office. His reputation was in tatters. So what do you do to get back on top again? Go on another Arctic expedition, of course. He was determined to find the Northwestern Passage this time. On May 19, 1845, Erebus and Terror left England and sailed for the western coast of Greenland. At Disco Bay, 5 men were discharged due to illness. They were the lucky ones, bringing the total number of the expedition crew to 129. On July 26, en route to Lancaster Sound, Franklin met 2 British whale ships, the Enterprise and the Prince of Wales. They were the last Europeans to see the Franklin expedition alive. The Erebus and Terror continued west in the summer of 1845 and circumnavigated Cornwallis Island via Wellington Channel. The crew spent the winter on tiny beachy island, where 3 crew members died and were buried in the permafrost. If Franklin followed the Admiralty's orders in the spring and summer of 1846, the Erebus and Terror would have continued west to Cape Walker at 98 degrees west longitude, and then they should have proceeded south and west by Peel Sound. On September 12, 1846, the sea froze around the Erebus and the Terror just north of King William Island. That following May, a party of 2 officers and 6 men led by Lieutenant Graham Gore left a note on a cairn, which was a tall pile of stones used as information kiosks in the treeless terrain on a northwestern coast of King William Island. After knowing the date and position where the 2 ships were stuck in the ice, Gore wrote, having wintered in 1846 to 47. This was actually an error. The true period was 1845 to 46. at Beechey Island in latitude 74, 43, 28 north, longitude 91, 39, 15 west, after having ascended Wellington Channel to latitude 77 and returned to the west side of Cornwallis Island. Sir John Franklin commanding the expedition. All well. Explorers knew that the sea usually froze in August or early September, and then broke up the following spring. However, in 1847, spring and summer never arrived in their corner of the Arctic. The Erebus and Terror drifted slowly and helplessly with the pack ice down the west coast of King William Island, unable to venture ahead due to the ice. From what happened to the crew on this point turns to speculation. They pretty much abandoned ship and disappeared. By spring of 1846, the ships were still stuck in ice. The men were approaching the end of their original food supply. It is also theorized that their food supply may have been tainted with lead due to modern examinations of bodies found on Beechey Island. The crew was also without their captain. Franklin and several officers of the crew had died of still unknown causes. Crozier, captain of the Terror, was now leading the expedition with Fitzjames as his second in command. They decided to abandon the Erebus and the Terror in a last-ditch attempt at survival. The men hoisted 2 boats on sledges and packed them full of provisions and items refashioned for survival, such as a table knife with a sharpened blade inside of a sheath made from a marine's bayonet scabbard. Then they set off in search of rescue, returning to the cairn where Gore had left a note a year before. Now Fitzjames and Crozier wrote, April 25th, 1848, HM ship Terror and Erebus were deserted on the 22nd of April, 5 leagues north-northwest of this, having been beset since 12th of September 1846. The officers and crew, consisting of 105 souls, under the command of Captain F.R.M. Crozier, landed here at latitude 69, 37, 42 north, longitude 98, 41 west. Sir John Franklin died on the 11th of June, 1847, and the total loss by deaths in the expedition has been, to this date, 9 officers and 15 men. And start tomorrow, 26th, for Backfish River. Backfish River was hundreds of miles away from King William Island. No one outside of King William Island had the faintest idea of what happened to the Franklin expedition when it didn't show up in the Bering Strait by 1846. The Admiralty resisted sending a rescue team, since the Erebus and the Terror had provisions for 3 years. Some thought the food supply could have been stretched to 5 years to 1850, but Lady Jane Franklin, Franklin's widow, launched a relentless campaign to force the Admiralty to act. Beginning of spring 1846, at exactly the same time that 105 survivors abandoned the ship, a series of mass search and rescue expeditions began combing the Arctic for clues. On August 27, 1850, a ship discovered the 3 graves on Beechey Island for the first tangible clue of Franklin's route, but found no letters or records. Despite that important find, subsequent expeditions in 1852 also came up empty-handed. In April 1854, the Hudson Bay Company surveyor John Ray met with several Inuit a few hundred miles east of King William Island. Ray asked if they'd seen white men on ships. One man said that some families had encountered about 40 survivors marching south along the west coast of the island, dragging a boat on a sledge. Franklin's men, appearing thin and low on provisions, told the Inuits that their ship had been stuck in the ice, and they were headed toward the mainland where they hoped to find game. Ray relayed the Inuits' next observations to the Admiralty. At a later date, the same season, 1850, but previous to the disruption of the ice, the corpses of some 30 persons and some graves were discovered on the continent, and 5 dead bodies on an island near it. Some bodies were in a tent or tents. Others were under the boat. The Inuit told him that they supposed they were surviving by eating the dead. The official records of the mission have never been found, with Ray claiming the Inuit had found them and discarded them. Rumors of cannibalism and the search for the missing crew still leaves us unsure if anyone survived this ill-fated expedition. The fate of the crew is one of the most enduring mysteries in the age of exploration. Numerous expeditions were sent out to find them. Numerous theories proposed to explain what happened. Dark rumors of cannibalism only made the mystery more compelling. It wasn't until 2014, 166 years after the incident, that a Canadian mission, equipped with all the latest marine archaeological equipment, found the Erebus. The Terror was discovered 2 years later, also at the bottom of the ocean. We still have questions left unanswered to this day. How did Sir John Franklin die? Was it possibly lead poisoning from the food rations, as consistent with the finding of the bodies on Beechey Island? What happened to the rest of the crew? Did they really eat the dead to survive? We still don't know what the answers are to this day. They have been left up to history. Well, that was truly a grotesque tale. Franklin's wanting to regain the status as a hero ultimately caused his demise, and the demise of other men aboard his ill-fated ships, with their fates seemingly lost to time. What fascinates me the most is that they found both ships just recently, the first one being 166 years later. Maybe they can put more clues together with more exploration of the ship. I think some of the crew got lead poisoning and died, while the ones who abandoned ship most likely starved to death. We can only hope that the souls of these long-gone travelers are resting in peace. Thank you for watching the video. Subscribe, like, and share if you would also like to keep exploring our grotesque curiosity. We will meet again in the darkness of the night.